back and you're watching Cyber Machine. Let's put this conversation to another critical issue that is celebrated globally. Now, despite progress made, literacy challenges persist with at least 77.1 million young people and adults lacking basic literacy skills today. According to Nigeria's Minister of Education in 2021, during the World Literacy Day, the minister disclosed that more than 76 million adults, representing 38% of the estimated 200 million population of Nigeria, cannot read and write despite increasing effort to improve literacy level in the country. To address the gaps in literacy projects across the globe, this year's theme, Transforming Literacy Learning Spaces, hopes to provide the opportunity to rethink the fundamental importance of literacy learning spaces to build resilience and ensure quality, equitable, and inclusive education for all. Now, to further the conversation, we've been joined by Chinazo Umewobi, Education Supervisor, Jesuit Refugee Service, JRS, and she joins us now to further this conversation. Chinazo, very good morning to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Nice to have you.
Thank you.
Well, going by the prelude of this discussion, let me just get your take. How important or imperative you think celebrating such a day like this, is to the global citizens?
I believe that celebrating International Literacy Day is very vital for human and social development across the world. Because, as we know, literacy is fundamental for our existence in the world. It opens our minds to new realities and new inventions. It also provides opportunity for people to aspire for more. It provides opportunity for nations to grow and to develop. So it's vital that once every year we have the opportunity to rethink how we are providing knowledge for people across the world.
All right, let's talk to the theme of the year, talking about transforming literacy learning spaces. Is there, a new policy, global policy that has to do with processing the transformation of this literacy, aspect to capture and fill in certain gaps, that has been created as a result of inefficiency, of either education tools and so on and so forth?
Well, as we are aware, in 2020 we all faced the pandemic, and so the COVID-19 pandemic showed a lot of gap in our education across the world. So I think that what is happening across the world is that we're beginning to try to readjust to the realities of COVID, to the realities of confining education not just to the learning spaces or to the students, but also the ability to use technology a lot to make sure that everyone keeps learning. So what's happening across the globe, what's happening across organizations is the fact that we are trying to adapt to the reality that education must not happen in a confined environment per se, So people are beginning to do radio learning, TV learning, using online platforms, doing distance learning and all of that in a bid to ensure that education continues while also adapting to the reality that COVID has presented to all of us.
Just to cover up the gaps that
yes, that exists, yes.
Okay, it's a good thing that you mentioned the pandemic, and during that time, we know that a lot of people were affected, schools were closed, that gap was created, and of course the need for it to also, for the education sector itself and all the actors to measure up to close the gap. But most importantly, those who will not or may not return to school even after the pandemic is one aspect that whoever it is, whatever sector we're looking at, especially the actors in these sectors need to really capitalize and concentrate on are the groups that may not necessarily go back to school after the pandemic. True. What are we doing to this number? Because the figure is so high that we cannot just neglect it. So what are we doing to this group of persons, especially the girl child and even the women, to a larger extent that may not be able to return to school after the pandemic and even maybe insurgency to say?
Okay, so for us at the Jesuit Refugee Service, what we do is to fill this particular gap. When the COVID lockdown was on, we were holding informal learning sessions for out-of-school children. And we also understand, apart from COVID, there's also the reality of insurgency in this part. So from 2020 up till now, we usually have a batch of out-of-school children for 6 months. It's a session that continues in our bid to also contribute to filling this gap, because this gap can only be filled if everyone works at it. So I believe that there are organizations across the world that are also contributing to this. And also currently we have a girl education project for Northeast Nigeria, where we have identified out-of-school girls particularly, and we've enrolled them back to school, provide school materials for them, and also support them with peer learning of life skill and all of that through a girl-for-girl session that we hold. We also provide hygiene materials and all of that for them. So the idea is to contribute the much that we can as an organization to bridging this gap that COVID has caused, has also, and also bridging the gap of insurgency that has led to a lot of high number, like you said, of out-of-school children across the world.
Okay, let's talk about collaborative effort, because possibly, I don't know how buoyant JRS is to be able to take up such responsibilities on her own. Let's talk about collaborative efforts. Do you collaborate with other NGOs? Do you collaborate with government? For instance, UNESCO, who happens to take education, so highly.
Okay, for us as organizations or partners in this sector, what we're here to do is to support government. Fundamentally, that is what we're here to do, to support government. So first, we always work with government. It is like a mandatory, yes. We have to work with government, and so whatever program we run, we work in collaboration with government. For example, we use school teachers who are already government staff.
Yes, right.
We use, with the support of the executive secretaries, education secretaries across the LGs where we work, we also use the school buildings. So just to ensure that even after we leave, that this is sustained. So we work with government definitely. And also there is the cluster and sector education in emergency cluster, where we also collaborate, work with our fellow partners to see that we do not replicate efforts in a particular location, and that we spread our tentacles as much as we can to ensure that every child that needs education, every woman, every girl is reached.
Okay, now quickly talk to us about maybe some policies, plan, programs that are solely JRS's in support of some of these education facilities that are already on ground, or infrastructures that are already on ground by government. What are you bringing aboard?
Okay, so very recently, JRS globally is working on the gender responsive education. This means that education that we provide should be responsive to gender. It should be an education that caters to the needs of each gender as much as possible. We know the realities of boys and girls are different, realities of men and women are different.
Absolutely.
So that is a global thing for GRS, and across the world, we are beginning to implement projects in line with this to bridge the gender gap that comes with education. If you look at the statistics, more men are educated than women. So the idea is to bridge that gap, contribute to bridging that gap in education. And also we implement what we call inclusive education programs that ensures that most of these groups are excluded, particularly persons with disability are included in our programs. We are currently planning trainings for teachers across Adamawa and Borno State on inclusive education, how they can make their learning spaces welcoming for every child, whether with disability or not, minority group or not, and all of that.
Now, in trying to bridge the gap, of course, there is this consideration as to regional variation. In the northern parts of the country, per se, most men, the male gender, are more educated than the female folks, owing to no ties to tradition, and some religious aspect of it. So part of the policy, have you been able to, infuse, first of all, the absolute definition of literacy, ability to read, write, and communicate, not only in English, but of course, infusing mass literacy movement, not just for those who have been in school and been obstructed by either insurgency or COVID-19, but of course, there are adult education system, mass literacy, covers up everything. Does the JRS also have this policy, injected in our plans, to fill this gap?
Yes, of course. For us at JRS, what we do is to accompany, serve and advocate for persons who are vulnerable. And we realize that, literacy is a vital tool for self-development, for boosting self-confidence. And so this may not be what we're doing in Nigeria particularly, but in other locations, yes, we have, in other countries, yes, we have adult education programs that are ongoing to help men and women learn and also grow. Then also, currently today in Dhaka community of Michika LGA, we're holding a road walk. The idea is to boost community members, Michika people's awareness on education, the importance that education holds for both boys, girls, men, women, and the potentials that education has, literacy, ability to read and write. And you also mentioned something about not just English.
That's correct.
Yes, our accelerated learning program, which we hold, is held in various languages. The idea is for these children to be able to learn to read and write, And if you know literacy very well, you know that once you're able to read in a certain language, for example, Hausa, it is easier to be able to learn to read in English. Absolutely. Because it's basically adding alphabets, then, syllables and all of that. Yeah. So that is also something that we consider in our programming for JRS.
But you also mentioned earlier about, education has improved. There is this evolution, technology-wise, education. And I see it in this part of the world. Of course, we have challenge of power. Yeah. And all of these technologies sometimes, it's hard to come by. So isn't this a challenge, particularly in terms of this evolution of education with technology? Isn't it a bit of a challenge? And how do you intend to surmount this challenge?
Yeah, of course, technology, evolving education from traditional to technological education is challenging, especially for us in the third world country like Nigeria. There's no light, internet connections are always bad most of the time. So it's a challenge, yes. It's also a challenge that the people who you're trying to get this education to might not be able to afford the facilities that are necessary to access this education. So yes, it's a challenge. And I believe that it is something that is surmountable, which I'm glad that the team of this year's Literacy Day is looking in that direction to help organizations, groups, individuals begin to think about what we can do, how we can contribute to bridging this challenge of that technology or poverty or COVID has provided. Yes.
And the quality of this education matters as well.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
So let's talk about quality. What quality or what does JRS expect after such projects are implemented, and if you have time frame of achieving A, B, or C of your project or policies and all of that?
Yes, of course, we have indicators for every particular stage of our project. So for a particular project, which I would use as an example, is a transition of out-of-school children back to school. So we hold accelerated learning program for 6 months, then we mainstream them into formal school. So to be mainstreamed into formal school, it means that you would have passed our tests for literacy and numeracy. And our curriculum is based on the Ministry of Education's curriculum for basic school, which is what we use also to teach literacy and numeracy for these children. So once they have increased in their literacy and numeracy level, we mainstream them. They are mainstreamed into the appropriate class that based on their level of knowledge and and all of that. Then we monitor their transition from one class to the next until they graduate out of primary school and transit into secondary school. So for the girls program, we also have that for girls in primary and secondary school. The idea is to sustain that enrollment in school. Children and girls are retained in school, and they also transit to the next level of education.
How do you deal with those, especially girls, or those group of people who might have been traumatized due to one issue or the other and says that schools are no longer safe for them. Schools are no-go areas for them. They'd rather be with their parents at home, or rather be safe than go to school and get kidnapped, go to school and get abducted, or start running helter-skelter and all of that. And most of them also fall victims of early marriages and even abductions, like I mentioned. How do you deal with people like that? Incorporating them and, of course, ensuring that they buy the idea of wanting to go back to school and stay in school to even learn.
Okay, so what we do is, first, when we identify a community with need, we do what is called community entry and community awareness. This awareness or sensitization provides opportunity for us to talk to the parents in their own space. Yeah. So once that conversation is had with their traditional leaders and religious leaders whom they respect, once that conversation is had, they go back to their communities and discuss how viable this is for them and give us a feedback. So usually, when we go back to the communities to identify the children and all of that, parents would have discussed and had opportunities to have peer review as to what lies in there for them. Yes, and because we also identify that there's psychological trauma that may be related to insurgency and all of that, we also infuse psychosocial support as part of our project. So the teachers provide psychosocial support. We also ensure that they have time to play. Play helps children to forget past experiences and all of that. Then from time to time, we usually hold therapeutic sessions to help deal with trauma for parents too, across the locations where we work. So,
okay, so the parents are also not exempted in
yes, they are not, yes. We also provide, as a way of supporting these families. We know that these children are vulnerable. And sometimes the reason why they are not sent to school is because of poverty. So we provide livelihood support for the parents as a way of encouraging them to, send the children to school and ensure that they are punctual in the classes and all of that.
But in your persuasion to convince the parents, beyond reasonable doubt that education is the key. Of course, we know that there is this mass abduction of students in schools, starting, with what we see happen in Chibok, and ever since the federal government of Nigeria came up with the Safe School Initiative program. But in the meantime, we haven't really seen that come to limelight. So how do you align your persuasion convincingly, as part of the parent, that should they want to go back to school, they will still be safe, owing to the fact that the government have given a promise, to protect schools, students while in schools?
Okay, so very recently we conducted a baseline assessment on a project we are going to begin to implement. It is called Creating Safer Schools in Northeast Nigeria. It is a project aligned with the Safe School Declaration. The idea is to make schools safer for children, for parents, for even the teachers who work in the schools. So part of what this project will do is to increase awareness, because generally, like you said, there's very little awareness about safer schools, with the recent happenings and all of that. So we are going to definitely be doing a lot of sensitization around that for parents. We'll be training SBMC members on early warning signs, what safety means, providing some infrastructure to make school safer for children. I believe that if all of these are done, parents will be more comfortable to send their wards to school, because they have seen with their own eyes that infrastructure has improved, awareness has improved, and also they begin to have collaboration with maybe the vigilante in their community or other security personnel, just to improve the feeling of safety in the community.
Part of my curiosity is maybe security tips for the students, part of this whole safety net kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I would like to learn karate, for instance.
You?
I'm not sure karate is part of it, but of course we have security tips, what to do when you hear a gunshot, where to run to, how to keep yourself safe. Yeah. Should you lie down flat or stand up or run or stay, and all of those things.
I know in other places,
yeah, oh sure, it's good. but I know in other clients there is this drill, like for instance in these premises, if the alarm goes on, what do we do? How do we
have a muster point and all of that? Yes, I believe that is part of what our safety training will be. We have consultants who will be coming from Abuja to do that training across different locations where we'll be working on this project.
All right.
Yes.
But at the end of it, now of course you have a projection.
Yes.
For every organization, there is this vision, mission, and of course an ideal projection where you want to arrive. So after the whole process is put in place, where do you see, particularly the northeastern part of the country, or is there a time frame that you think all these inputs of yours, will materialize and then, come to limelight?
Well, as you know, it's a human intervention, so we cannot say for sure that this particular year this will happen. What we do at GRS is to continue to help communities to become more confident, to help people to be able to make decisions for themselves, and make a better life. So the idea is to continue to provide the support that we can, and believe that, in due time, it will all yield results, yes. Because it's one thing to provide support, is another for, how do I say, for the impact to show. Impact might take some time to show, but of course we'll get outputs, we'll get outcomes and all of that.
But from what you've done so far, maybe a survey or something, if you've really assessed, some of the impact created by some of your projects and all of that, how is the acceptability like in the locations you've carried out some of your projects and all that?
Well, for us at GRS, it is, we are a household name in the communities where we work. And one of the feedbacks I remember very clearly is the fact that the communities where we serve believe that we look at them, we work with them from their own human point of view. We do not just assume
impose something.
Yes, on them. We work with them from their point of view, from where they are, not assuming where they should be. We work with them from where they are and accompany them through their different realities that we're trying to support.
Taking into cognizance their needs, their wants, and so there is this conversation.
Yes.
That
for us as an organization, we call it accompaniment. Okay. The ability to go with someone in their own reality, in their own space, to show that empathy for someone, serve them in their own space, not assuming that this is what the reality is. Yes.
All right. Now you talked about the Northeast, in particular, and you made reference to Michika local government and so on. Now, if you look at these axes, they are predominantly entrepreneurs. You could see a student goes to school, after school either goes to market, continues his business, and whatever thing he does to earn money for a living. Do you also, absorb that in your itinerary, your prospect to see that you help them develop, entrepreneurial skills, so that they can be self-reliant? Because when you talk about literacy, a lot of people feel that if you go to school and acquire education, it's for you at the end of the day to get a government job, to get a job. So you go to school just to get a job, but not to be educated to impact your immediate community. Do you have that as part of your itinerary?
Yes, so for GRS in Northeast Nigeria, we have 4 thematic areas: education, livelihood, gender, and reconciliation. So a lot of times what we do, when we do an education project, we infuse livelihood support into it. For example, one of the projects that we're doing with teachers and children, we are also providing livelihood support for family members of the teachers. The idea is to support teachers in a way that they are not worried about getting income from anywhere else. They are concentrating on teaching in school, being in school, and all of that. And also we have what we call the YELP program, is Young Entrepreneurial Program for young people across Adama and Borno State, where we train them on different skills, tailoring, soap making, production of oil, and all of that. And once we're done with the training, we provide startup kits for them, then also provide financial management trainings and support for them as they grow their business.
All right. Chinazo Omemwobi, Education Supervisor, Just Refugee Service. Thank you so very much. for your time on the program, and it is indeed a good work you're doing.
Indeed.
So please, GRS should continue. We really do need supports like this, especially in the northeastern part of the country that has been affected, by so many unfortunate situations. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Safari Official returns shortly after this time out. Stay with us.